The sunrise comes to warm our hearts.
From the ashes of war, through the blood and the gore, a man once more than this world that is torn. A group that cannot just be stopped or forgot will rise to overcome all odds. And with every new day, through the parts that we play, as we push fear away and remember the ways of a man who was kind and whose words will remind.
Chapter 9. A Mystery Mare's Mystery. For life and death are one. Eve as the river and sea are one. Khalil Gibran. I awoke to the incessant poking of a broomstick against my cheek. Rolling over, I muttered.
Go away, broom. I want to hug Mom.
My sharp yelp shattered the air as the insistent stick poked me right under the tail. My cry shrilled enough to wake even the dead. Flailing wildly, I turned to give the stickholder a glare that could melt power armor. There were some places you just don't prod on a young filly.
Sorry about that. We come in every 8 hours and poke some of the folks in here to make sure they're still alive. We've had a few expire on the beds here.
The flophouse mare, whose name escaped me, pulled the broom in closer and started to sweep. She had a coat of soft purple, with a mane of pure green and a tail that was chopped short. She looked at me with big brown eyes and kept moving the broom idly.
Then why did you poke me after I moved?
I snapped, still quite flustered from the close encounter with the handle.
Well, a mare has to have some fun around here.
She trailed off with a smile as she swept. I could imagine out here, there aren't exactly a lot of jester ponies bringing smiles to faces anymore, or something like that. The whole poke me in the butt for a rude awakening, then don't say anything about it thingy seemed weird to me. Consider her reaction.
Wait, expired? You mean that there are ponies that die in these beds?
I let out a gulp as my eyes slid down to the mattress I was laying on and to the dark stains I have thought were more embarrassing than lethal. My lips started to quiver, the feeling of fear creeping in. I was imagining the ghost of all those dead ponies looking down upon the bed's occupant, waiting for me to join them.
Yeah, they come in bloody and barely alive, thinking they don't have a need for Doc Bonesaw to look at them. And then they don't wake up, and I end up with a bloody mattress and quite a bit of salvage. So we check every 8 hours to make sure they're still alive, or if I've got a new corpse to deal with.
The broom stopped as I screamed and leaped into the air. The covers flew up in a rush as they landed on the floor, and I landed on all 4 hooves with a squeak of the springs inside the old bed. I could hear myself hyperventilating as my lungs burned for air. I darted around the mattress but failed to find a stain as I gasped for breath.
Calm yourself, sweetheart. I saw the stable suit, so I knew better. I made sure we put you in a clean bed.
There was a reassurance in her voice, almost like motherly talk. Slowly, my eyes rolled over to the flophouse mare, and I let out a relieved sigh.
Thank you, I guess.
My voice trailed off, searching for a name. A look of realization appeared across the mare's features as she interrupted any further words I had.
On a hearth fire, and you're welcome. Go on down and get your breakfast. Well, I suppose it's lunch now. You've been out most of the day. You passed out next to your griffin friend and didn't look injured, so we hefted you into a bed.
She hooked a hoof with a broomstick and yanked my legs from under me. With a surprised yelp, I crashed onto the floor hard enough to drive out air from my lungs.
No standing on the beds. You'll wear 'em out and make me have to replace 'em.
Honey Heartfire's voice echoed with the bouncing springs of the bed and my body crashing to the floor. She made me blush, and I felt like I was genuinely guilty of a crime. Just like my own mother, she had a capability of cutting a pony down with nothing more than a guilt-imbuing glare and a few snappy words, leaving me feeling lower than a parasite who just ate the last cookie.
She wields guilt like a mega-spell launcher. If only we had her during the war, the zebras would have surrendered like embarrassed foals. How can you manage to have a voice as sweet as honey and an inflection that literally drips with the venom of "I'm disappointed" in the same breath?
She does have a cutie mark that is a bed with a gavel on it. Also, Sunrise, she's looking at you. It is rude to not at least say something.
Damn it, Pink Pone, I'm thinking here!
I didn't realize I had said that last bit out loud until the purple mare raised a green eyebrow in confusion. I shifted around sheepishly on the floor and crawled back onto my hooves. The only real wound I had was my pride and feeling like a scolded foal.
Sorry, just got a little carried away thinking out loud.
My voice was low with embarrassment, and all I could really think to do was to find a way very far away from here as politely as possible.
My friends are out in the mess hall downstairs.
My head kept hung down, trying to hide the light green turning white blush that was burning into my cheeks through my neck.
Ooh, you blushed back to your original fur color. There's no hiding that one.
Pink injected, as though she could see me from an omnipresent perspective. Honey looked at me and poked my rear.
Go on, grab your stuff and get down to your friends. Everyone probably wants to know what the massive slam into the floor was, Angel with a shotgun.
The mare said the name, but it made no sense to me. I looked at her perplexed, and then groggily collected my stuff. My pip-buck beeped as saddlebags and backpacks settled onto my flanks. The shotgun found its holster, along with the click of a buckle hooking my helmet's chin strap into a belt loop. The weight was both familiar and comforting. My sides ached. My head felt like it was swimming in a fog thick enough to drink. And I remembered seeing the sunrise before passing out. It was the first sad sunrise I have seen in this new world. I knew now what my father meant when he said that he had once seen a sad sunrise. It was like the beautiful colors were reflected from gun blasts into rays of pristine solar radiation. It breathed life into the world, then snuffed it out instantly, and then took more death with it than it could have ever brought life. Earlier that morning, I understood now how something so beautiful with colors of life, giving reds and sweet safe blues, could be twisted into something of pure depression and absolutely nightmarish to watch. All the stark, horrific colors and bright sky taken in as I slammed my hoof repeatedly into the scrap metal that served as a door. Inside, I heard the armored pony shouting, annoyed at me as he trotted over to the door, causing up a storm the entire way. As he opened up, I held up the bag of bottle caps, the helmet, and put on my sweetest, poorest feely eyes that I could. I knew it was early, but it couldn't wait, and I had no idea how long it would take the gruff, burly-looking stallion to refit the helmet for a griffin.
No one else gets to die like Buddy if I have my way.
As I left the armor maker when he was finished, I looked to the sickly sunrise, barely powering through the dark, unnatural clouds, the haze in the morning air giving the light an unnatural cast that shook me to the very core.
I can't stand to look at the sunrise. My namesake. And want to pluck out my own eyes to look away.
As the memories of the morning came back, I felt tears dropping onto the wood floor as my hooves carried me on their own towards the stairs. These halls were lined with planks of wood that I could not tell if they were stained with blood or wood-cultured paint. I got to the bottom of the stairs when the tears stopped, and my hooves dragged me into the tavern mess hall. Chifonda was sitting there at the table, eating what looked like veggie slop from an improvised bowl that might have been a coffee table at some point. The wooden table used to be a park bench, as all the other tables in here were. Every single piece of furniture in here was a patchwork of plywood repairs and tin-braided nails over cracks or holes. There was even sawdust glued into any gouge smaller than a hoof. I got up to the table and saw an apple that looked absolutely pristine.
Thank the goddesses! Fruit still exists!
I picked it up into a hoof, and just before I could sink my teeth into that delicious red skin, some pony knocked it out of my hooves. I slammed my teeth down with a pain that could only result in my entire jaw screaming.
Who am I about to buck in the crotch?
Sunrise, look at it!
I felt my own tail brush over my lips while my teeth ached from impacting into each other. I realized my tail was the thing that knocked it out of my hoof. My head shifted towards the apple on the table and saw the hole in the bottom. It was made out of wax.
Am I so tired that I can't tell the difference in wax and real food?
While I was staring, a griffin talon put a real apple into my hoof. Alguacil leaned down to see my tired eyes and smirked.
For someone named Sunrise, y'all sure ain't waking up bright-eyed.
The sombrero-wearing feathered creature said, as he took up the bench next to me.
Just because I'm named Sunrise doesn't mean I'm a morning pony.
My thoughts were interrupted by a lovely, delightful smell.
Coffee! Ah, that still exists!
I looked away from the apple that, while ripe, had a few extra bumps of growth on it and made my pipbuck let out the occasional click as it rested in my right hoof. Niora walked right up with metal mugs in a paper sleeve that breathed succulent-scented steam into the air in grayish-white clouds.
The vendors of a coffee shop outside with the real stuff.
He held up the 4 mugs.
Would anyone...
I grabbed one greedily before he could finish, and I was already halfway through it before he ended that sentence.
like a cup?
I could feel his questioning eye, and did not care one bit. Even black? This was something delightful, that the sheep stuff that I bought the day before was sludge in comparison.
Wonderful black liquid of the goddesses made of the most bitter beans that bring me to life. Please never leave me again.
After getting the cup down to a third left from a full 20-ounce mug.
Okay, it wasn't that big, right? It still tasted lovely, and I felt like at that moment I could take on the whole world as it warmed my insides.
Thank you, Nyota. I hope you got enough to last a while.
I gulped down another long drug of sweet black nectar, and as I could feel my flanks melting into the bench. Chifonda let out a giggle and poked my pipbuck as I moved to take a bite out of the apple.
Turn on the radio with a bit of gusto,
He urged, and I gave him a suspicious look, taking the bite and munching slowly while my hooves moved and flicked the switch. I was rolling over the taste of the apple as I scrolled through the radio stations.
Wow, it's sweet at first, and then turns tingly and bitter. I do not like these new apples.
Chifonda pointed at the 10-pony tower frequency on the list of incoming signals. The tail end of Hearts as Strong as Horses by Cutie Mark Crusaders played as another voice came on. A voice I recognized with quite a bit of shock.
Greetings, Equestria Wasteland! This is your host with the most, DJ Bone3, broadcasting live from 10 Pony Tower with a lovely piece of mint muffin cake. And here's some news from the Wasteland. Now, I had to verify this story from 3 separate sources because otherwise it would be outrageous. You cannot say that DJ Pwn 3 is not vigilant with his research. The mercenary city of Silverfang Shanty reports that a piece of stable tech construction equipment, model Sand Dog 3500, rolled up to the settlement under its own power. Arriving at around 2 in the afternoon 2 days ago with a small green filly driving it. Said filly was reported to be wearing Stable 43 barding. Now, children, no pony knows where Stable 43 is from. The filly was looking to sell said piece of equipment, and sure enough, the citizens of Silverfang Shanty report it worked right as rain. A particularly rich ghoul zebra that those from the area will know as the Curator purchased the piece of equipment for his collection. So, children, if you ever need a deep hole dug, perhaps you can talk to the Curator or find this green filly to get another one working.
There was a pause, as we could hear him taking a long deep breath. I looked around stunned. My friends had gathered around while the bar stared at us.
We were the ones being talked about. Was this just uncommon for others to stick their necks out like this? I don't understand. We aren't heroes, we just did the right thing.
I didn't get it, and now I was starting to understand just what it meant to some ponies. That we had done something that seemed impossible, and it had changed more than just our lives, or the ones that we had directly touched.
Now, this story was strange already, but it gets stranger, my friends. Apparently, said filly set out with the companions of a griffin, a sand dog, 2 zebras, and a pony in a box. According to witnesses, they heroically engaged a group of raiders led by the renowned Double Headshot Brain Soup and have returned once again to Silverfang Shanty. With them were no less than 7 additional ponies, including 2 fillies they had rescued. Now, children, there is more to this story, but for now, the rescued raider captives have been taken in by the Silverfang mercenaries as new trainees, while the fillies are reported to have new parents to look after them. Let's hear it for the Silverfang! They have a heart, even if it's made of caps. But, more importantly, who is this filly, and why are the rescued ponies referring to her as the angel with a shotgun? I'll give you more information as the story unfolds. In the meantime, children, let's listen to an oldie but a goodie. I ain't addicted yet.
What? He was talking about us? And who had told him?
I looked up as I realized during the broadcast that I had dropped the apple in shock.
Where does he get his information, and why did he call Corners an angel with a shotgun?
I questioned when Alguacil motioned a dark olive-green unicorn with an orange mane and silver highlights over the dull caution cone collar. The stallion trotted over, and I couldn't help but notice the scars on his body around his barding. Even his face was not spared, with what looked like a badly stitched cut across the top of his muzzle from lip to lip. I looked the olive stallion over, and then looked at Alguacil with a raised eyebrow. My eyes were full of questions, but I wasn't asking anything yet.
No one is ever sure where DJ Pwn 3 gets his information, but Corners doesn't have a shotgun anymore, Sunrise.
Alguacil looked from the stallion to me, and then back to the stallion with his one eye.
Then who is he talking about?
I asked, trying to adjust to the taste of wasteland apples with a final bite.
At least the taste is consistent all the way through.
It is of you he speaks, sleepy Sunrise, my sweet. I will explain further, little one. You are the angel with a shotgun.
Chifondo pointed to me and then flicked my nose playfully. All I could do was stare back at him in complete shock. The apple, half eaten, dropped out of my hoof and onto the floor.
What? I'm on the radio? Why? What did I do? How did he know? Why hadn't he mentioned the death of Buddy? DJ Pwn 3, do you have any idea how much more confused you just made me? Buddy, Right. He isn't here anymore, and he can't hear me. Are my parents gone too? No, surely they got put into stasis as well, right?
You have hope, Sunrise. Until proven otherwise, you have hope. Investigate the files, and also push against Alguacil's suggestion.
What was that, Pink? How do you always... Are you the one in control of my tail?
Sunrise, you are the stable dweller out and about. Stable dwellers seem to have this special place with DJ Pony. At least, that's how I've always heard it.
Neota explained as he sipped his coffee after adding a white liquid labeled milk and sugar packets to it. I looked at them confused, then noticed the full-grown stallion had been sitting there the entire time. I took another look at him, taking in the fact that he was a unicorn, which made me smile inside.
Nice to know unicorns aren't all evil.
His facial features were young. He was older than me, but just from what I can tell. His eyes, however, were the thing that drew attention. There was a hurt there, like something that he had struggled to earn, but was denied. He had cut something off in his life. Something that hurt more than he had ever admitted. It was like staring at a wounded soul laid bare beyond those orange orbs, just over the jagged scar upon the bridge of his nose. That scar seemingly acting like armor to divert focus away from the hurt in his eyes. My gaze directed back to Alguacil, and now that I felt the caffeine kick in, I could see that his injuries from last night had disappeared. There were even signs of feathers on his body being better groomed, even repaired. I looked back at the unicorn and cocked my head to the side.
Hi, I'm Wandering Sunrise. If you can't tell, I'm not a morning pony.
My weariness was so obvious. A school teacher would have kept her eye on me, just in case I fell asleep in class.
Hi, yourself? I'm Quickstitch. I fixed up your friend over there.
The unicorn replied back, ill-prepared and off-footed, forcing nicety. He was a soft baritone, and I could tell that maybe even had a little singing talent, with the way he had a rhythm in its speech. I pointed a hoof at Chifundo, then at Neota, then outside where I assumed Corners was, and then to Alguacil.
Which one? All of them secretly need some medical attention, probably.
Alguacil raised a talon, with his expression not changing from a smirk along his beak. Quickstitch nodded his horn towards the larger non-pony at the table. I looked at one and then the other, very confused.
You willingly let someone put medical expertise to you?
It got rid of the headache.
Alguacil said, lifting his hat and then pointing his talon to the helmet I had made for him this morning. He was just making sure that I knew he took it.
Also, he is in them healer's robes.
Looking down past Quickstitch's face towards his neck and over his body, I was taking him all in now. The yellow barding with armor plates had a set of 3 butterflies on the chest and another set of them on the flanks. It was an oddly good shape compared to all the other barding's ponies were. I felt my eyes were going to burst out of my head when it clicked just whose armor that was.
The Ministry of Peace still functions?
I thought out loud while looking at Quickstitch. No one seemed to know what I was talking about for quite a few moments, but then the darker green stallion got that I was addressing him.
I am not a member of the Ministry of Peace, but I follow Fluttershy and her code. And yes, I am a doctor.
My hoof pointed to his armor, and then to his face, and then to his armor, and then back to his face. My mouth fluttered a gap, searching for words until I finally gave up. Shrugging and unable to argue, I left out a sigh.
As far as I'm concerned, so long as that armor is on you, you are a follower of Fluttershy. And she is the only Ministry mare I ever thought wasn't completely off her rocker.
I looked to Nyota and Chifundo, implying their thoughts on the subject when I finished speaking.
Thank you?
Quickstitch was clearly confused.
I never met Fluttershy personally, but I have read some text about her and the Ministry of Peace's code, enough to get an idea that is a compliment coming from a stable dweller.
The table got very quiet, as Chifundo and Nyota appeared to be speaking their weird silent zebra language, with just some movements of their eyes and hooves. I looked up at Alguacil and poked its shoulder with a hoof.
I assume that you want him to join us?
The hesitation in my voice was quite apparent, and then I felt a talon on my head petting me softly.
He's all right by me. You?
Alguacil asked earnestly.
Did an adult just ask for my approval? What was this place, and why was it upside down land? Sparrow went along with my idea for taking in the foals, and training the refugees to join the Silver Fangs had gone over rather easy. She was especially happy to take the trainees when I offered the rifles we salvaged. Now, our Regulator, whom I had gotten that helmet made for as a panic response to Buddy, was asking for my approval of traveling companions? DJ Pone 3 had called me the angel with a shotgun. It reminds me of the drawings I had been leaving around the wasteland. I don't know why I was leaving them behind, or where I had gotten the idea, but now I was this hero to these ponies. This angel with a shotgun.
Oh, Sunrise! Everyone is looking at you, expecting an answer. You've been keeping them in suspense for nearly 5 minutes. Equestria to Sunrise! Calling Sunrise! It is time to reveal the dawn!
Oh, right. Thanks, Pink. Well, if he is a medic and Alguacil trusts him, at the very least, we can hopefully prevent losing someone else. Or patch up corners when she smashes her leg on a door again.
I replied, then extended a hoof to Quickstitch. He took it and we shook. For better or for worse, we had a medical pony that could do more than just slap a bandage on and force a brew down our throats. I looked at Nyota to see his expression. He was smiling just long enough to be caught.
At the very least, Nyota will have someone else to work on him if he gets shot again.
I commented with an expression to say to him.
I saw that.
Quickstitch shrugged and smiled while Alguacil muttered something under his breath. I scrutinized him for a bit, both impressed with Quickstitch's work, but also sensing he wasn't telling us everything.
So, have you all been busy this morning? Are we still going to try for the coordinates near Applewood and Las Pegasus? Or did someone get something else that we need to look at?
Chifundo shrugged, while Nyota pulled out a combat helmet like I had seen on Equestria army recruitment posters, shining it up with a hoof. Quickstitch nudged Alguacil, and the griffin let out a disgruntled growl. Before he could speak, a familiar box, now covered in scrap metal plates, walked up and dumped a bunch of junk onto the ground next to me.
Hey, what's this?
The box mare interrupted us all, with Corners pulling the box up and tossing aside scrap metal, rusted springs, and even half of a plastic pony bank, as she seemed to be looking for something specific. Alguacil and I looked at each other, and then to the pile of junk, till I picked up a black gun that looked like a toy.
Hey, this is one of those guns the zebras have in the posters. It uses darts.
Alguacil pointed at it as I made a realization.
That is a needler pistol.
It's in awful shape, though. I doubt it'll fire without a lot of repair work done to it.
I passed the gun back to Corners. She took it into the box with the cutest expression behind that visor slit that I have ever seen. It's like a filly who just realized someone gave a full-size Hershey bars for Nightmare Night.
Alguacil, you were saying?
I pried, curious as to what could have had his feathers in a matted wad.
Well, there is a job at the Regulator office, but I don't like it. It's fishy to say the least.
He mused.
Something rubs me the wrong way when they won't give me any details until you meet them.
Curiosity officially peaked to the point that I cannot let it go. You are in for a wild ride now, Alguacil.
Fine, let's meet with them.
I stood up and trotted for the door. Just as I got to the point where I was halfway in and out of the flophouse, I shouted back.
I'm gonna go meet with them!
Alguacil looked at me dumbfounded at the announcement. It didn't seem to register to him that I had hijacked his mission until I was out of sight. I heard talons and a heavy griffin paw doing a quick jog to catch up to me, and the gravel that was the griffin's voice called out.
Hey, now wait up! Let's talk about this. I got a bad feeling.
We kept talking as we made our way down the path to the Regulator's tent, seemingly in the process of being upgraded from a bunch of canvas to a scrap metal shack to match the rest of the town.
Alguacil, we hear them out. Worst case, we turn down the job after we hear it.
I don't think it works that way, kid.
The griffin replied as I kept walking.
Well, the last time we didn't investigate one of your hunches, we lost,
I trailed off, unable to voice the thought.
Push past it now. Say it out loud or you won't ever be able to.
Pink, don't push me right now.
We lost Buddy when we didn't listen to your hunch. You got a bad feeling. I think we should check it out.
Alguacil was taken aback at this type of logic.
That is the thing. I don't think we should look at this one.
He went to block the entrance to the tent, and I slipped right under his talons. He hadn't accounted for how short I really was.
And the last time we didn't look into something that you had a bad feeling about, Nyota got shot, you got your face mauled by an explosive, and Buddy died!
The last part I shouted as we stepped into the tent. The blue unicorn sitting at the desk jerked up, levitating her Colt pistol pointing right at us, but then raised an eyebrow as she watched us arguing with each other.
I understand that, but this one is different. You have to understand.
The unicorn got up and went behind a curtain to the back room of the puke green tent.
I got a feeling that we shouldn't take this one, and it might not work the way you think it should.
And I'm curious! You got a bad feeling! We hear them out!
I slammed my hoof against the hard-packed earth, and with that, shut the door to the griffin's complaints. The navy mare came back in and adjusted her honey-colored mane with a box of apple bombs. Munching away at them, she was watching us like we were some form of entertainment.
What is the worst that could happen? We turn it down?
I got the glare of justice at that moment.
Don't ever say those words again.
Which ones? There were a lot of words there.
The shot back was both sarcastic and serious, just to see if I could get under his skin at this point. He was more stubborn than an earth pony and a mule pulling a carriage in opposite directions.
What is the worst? That is just inviting something bad to happen in the wasteland.
The griffin leaned down to emphasize his words and get eye to eye with me.
Fine. I won't. But we still hear them out.
My focus turned to the mare, who was smacking loudly on the apple-flavored candy cereal.
Oh, well, if you two are done, I didn't want to interrupt. It seemed important.
The unicorn replied. I smiled and walked up to her.
The special job. Call them up. See what we have to do to meet with them.
My head turned back to Alguacil as we stared each other down for a bit, waiting for him to confirm and relent. The mare didn't move as she also looked at him.
Fine, but I will hold my I told you so for when the time is right.
Alguacil replied and then turned to the deep blue unicorn to give a nod.
All right, let me see how long it'll be. You will probably have to come back tomorrow morning, considering how late it is.
The Regulator sheriff closed her eyes and her horn glowed. The room became much brighter as her magic manifested. Then the horn glowed eased away, and the unicorn's eyes opened back up.
Seems like you two have a lucky charm. The clown will be here in about an hour, if you want to wait.
The blue unicorn slowly let a satisfying grin spread over her face, while another dried apple bomb was tossed into the air and caught in her mouth. Alguacil and I stared each other down as we took a seat. He sat upon a chair that looked like it was cobbled together from several other metal desk chairs. It had wheels from one chair, a support rod connecting the wheels up to two halves of a green and black office chair, all wielded together like a piece of abstract art. I took my seat in a leathered pillow with feather stuffing sized up like a beanbag chair. It only took one testing with one hoof to see how soft and responsive it was, before I did a full-on belly flop onto it like a newly released foal. The hour passed in silence as Alguacil and I kept exchanging wordless glares. The mare at her desk munched on another apple bomb, the loud crunching drawing our attention to her. The sun was just enough to release the tension.
I swear, Alguacil, if she says kiss already, I'm gonna strike you harder than that Steel Ranger could have ever hoped, and then figure out how to kiss someone with a beak.
I started thinking about the last time I had been this mad at someone, as my conscious thoughts glazed over and a memory overtook me. T-minus 11 months, 9 days until Megaspell Day. I was behind a Sky carousel, a Mark 7 to be exact. The machine was in a state of disassembly, and I was sitting in the spell matrix compartment. The heavy tiled and concrete wall at the back of the shop had slid up. That wall revealing a hidden room. The lights were out and the shop was closed while my head eased the hood up so I could see into the secret room.
Why am I here? I remember this, but this is my own body, right? Wait, are memories supposed to be this clear? And what if the mystery person shows up while I'm here? Why does my own memory feel like a memory orb from a recollector? Or the stable stasis tank system? What is Alguacil seeing right now when he looks at me?
Sunrise, focus on the memory.
Beyond the secret door laid a set of stairs spiraling downwards, with machine shop sounds echoing from below. I could see the dim edges of light shining up to the landing of the metal stairs. I felt my host, me, echoing the thoughts about my father spending all nights at his shop. He was getting home closer to 3 or 4 in the morning, sleeping until 10 and then back out again. Even on days he normally wouldn't work, and I had to know why. Today, when he sent me home, I'd snuck back into the shop and gotten into the carousel's engine compartment. This wasn't a well-thought-out plan, just an improvised one, and surely Mom wouldn't notice me missing, call Dad, and he would discover me. Until then, I had a chance to spy. With the hesitation of a mouse, wanting to scurry during the moment of silence on the summer sun festival rising, my host eased from the compartment. Her head rotated to check both ways, left, then right, and left again. A feeling of fright pulsed with every heartbeat through each hoof as they took a soundless step towards the stairs. The nerve-wracking fear made my nose numb, and a desire of wanting to be anywhere but here ate at my mind. Slowly the hoofs moved up onto the railing of the spiral staircase and looked down. No pony there. All metal stairs, in a tight spiral surrounded by concrete, and lit by a bright light at the bottom. There was a dim metal door at the bottom I had never seen before, with an insignia I did not recognize on it.
If you go in there, you won't have a way out except the way you came.
I could feel the hesitation every second until the hoof touched the first stair down. Then it was a mad scramble. I I remembered that scramble being a lot longer than this. The noise made from hoof on metal grated all the way down to the grey concrete at the bottom, roaring like a summer storm.
You were trying to be sneaky. That was the most unsneaky way to do this.
With the winds, the host eased towards the door, the trepidation returning with a vengeance. A white hoof reached for the door and eased the long handle down. There was a click, and then the door swung open as if pulled by someone else on the other side. Rainbow Rise stood behind the door, but my attention was devoted to the other pony in the room. A pink-furred white mane pony in all black armor barding. This mare did not hesitate. She leaped forward and slammed into my host as the world went for a tumble. I felt a hoof upon my throat, slowly choking me as my host struggled to move. A full-blown panic spiked as the feeling of life ebbed away. This was not meant to make me unconscious. This was to kill.
Sunrise! Get off of her! That's my daughter!
I heard my father's voice yelling, but sounding miles away. The shouting was barely heard over the ringing in my ears and the dimming of the world around me.
What do you mean? How did she get in here?
The stern mare's hoof pressed harder into my throat, and I could feel my windpipes wanting to give out.
Get off her, or I will not work for you!
As the weight shifted, as the sound of my meaty twack rang out, the hostess' air was completely cut off. Just long enough to drop the blackness. The memory faded with a jolt. My throat ached and my body felt sluggish. The pain of the memory was coursing into me, like it had just happened.
Was that the last time I met someone mysterious? Who was that pink mare again? Why did she...
Sunrise, stop! You were almost gone an hour as is! You realize your brain and memories are working funny?
Pinky yelled at me.
Wait, what are you talking about? And how deep are you in my head?
Oh, Sunrise, you'll figure it out if you live long enough. But get in there and worry about Pinky now. Figure out the problems with 71 later.
My eyes drifted over to Alquasil, who looked back at me disapprovingly, and then humphed. He turned his head to the entry flat a second before it moved. I could see a pony under a hood and cloak walking in. They stopped and raised a familiar dull gold hoof, apprehensively hesitating before finishing entering the tent. There was a shrug and a roll of the pony's shoulders, body language that my instinct recognized, but couldn't place. She reached up and removed her hood, revealing herself as the mercenary captain and leader of Silver Fang Shanty, Sparrow.
Well, I didn't expect it to be y'all,
she said, and made her way in. Sparrow did not sit, but stood in front of the two of us instead. The unicorn regulator's horn lit up, and my eyes were drawn to the pop of the telekinetic envelope wrapping around the tent flaps. After a few flicks of the mare's horn, the tent was tied close for our privacy.
All right, I don't have a whole lot of time, but y'all can come by my house later to ask questions.
The Pegasus paused for a bit and closed her eyes.
My husband is missing, has been for almost half a year. I want to send some pony out to find him.
She hesitated again, this time for a long period. I started to speak up, but she cut me off.
I doubt he is still alive, but if he is, bring him home. Otherwise, find out what happened to him. He was a Dashite from the Enclave. He disappeared one night without a sign of struggle or a sound. I climbed into bed next to him, curled up against my hot-cross buns, and when I woke up, he was gone. I know in the days leading up to his disappearance...
A tear rolled down her cheek, onto her cloak. This wasn't the same jaded Pegasus commander we had known when we entered the town. Nor was she the shrewd detective to ensure who we were, and lastly, certainly not the no-nonsense mother we had encountered at the gates this morning. This was what she looked like when her guard were down and her heart exposed.
He kept looking over his shoulder and searching for shadows from the west. He'd fly out in the morning and always checked west. I didn't think much of it at the time. Every pony here has something they're always worried about. But he was downright obsessive. Up with dawn, flying patrols to the west no matter the weather or risks. He kept telling me he saw shadows out coming from the west, from the ruins of Lost Pegasus.
She placed her head into her hoofs and held it there, covering her face.
Did some pony here have it out for him?
Alguacil coldly fired as he adjusted his sombrero, so she would have to look into his eye.
He was a Dashat, so I assumed that the entire enclave would be after him. He also got into some squabbles with earth ponies here.
She paused for a bit and lifted her head.
There were some earth ponies that were openly hostile. The only reason they didn't strike him was because he wore our mercenary uniform.
She banged her head a few times as if trying to remember exactly.
There was a high-end merchant, eccentric, that showed up on the day he disappeared. He had talons escorting him, and they didn't seem to care for Pegasi at all.
The Pegasus lifted her head and looked at us with a desperate expression.
Do you have an exact date when he was taken? Do you keep a logbook of traveling merchants in and out?
Alguacil demanded, his own interest starting to peak up at the mention of talons. Whoever they were.
Yes, we keep a logbook. You can speak to the quartermaster about it. He should know plenty. As for when he disappeared...
Sparrow inhaled.
I last held my buns 137 days, 12 hours, and 24 minutes ago.
She spoke the exact time, like it was a moment she refused to let go of. And her day of the year wasn't a normal calendar, but how long it had been since she had held her lover.
He occasionally spoke like they might come get him one day. I thought he meant the enclave.
Sparrow took another breath and moved to get out of the chair onto her hooves.
I just never thought it would happen. Least of all, him disappearing from our own house.
The Pegasus hung her head for a moment, then looked up at us.
If you want the job, it's 1,000 caps. You can ask more questions tonight when we have some privacy at my house.
Sparrow stood up and put the hood back on to conceal her face.
You can talk to me at my house tonight.
She hefted the cloak to cover herself back up.
Nugget will be happy to see you before you leave as well. If you want the job, stop by for more questions, and I'll make your group dinner.
She must really be driven crazy by the thought of her lover leaving. I know if my parents had disappeared in the night like that.
I looked at my paperbook and saw the selected label, Special Files.
Oh wait, I do, and I know exactly how she feels. How many had turned her away or told her to give up? No, I don't care what it takes. Even if all we find is a body, it's better than living this life that both of us are enduring. My parents will take a long time to solve. Much longer than just looking for a Pegasus. Well, we are heading west tomorrow anyway. We'll do it, Sparrow.
The Pegasus looked rather startled that we didn't have more immediate questions. Alguacil snapped his attention to me like a hawk about to strike.
We will?
Alguacil, we're heading that way anyway. And if there's a chance that we can help this place out even more, why not take it?
I turned to Alguacil with a smirk and winked at him with my eye away from Sparrow.
Besides, isn't there a bounty from the regulators that covers pony nappers and rescuing the kidnapped?
I can't believe I'm saying this.
He grunted to try to get past the point.
Fine, kid. You got some sort of head on you.
His head lifted up with what looked like hope in his eyes, for the first time since I met the griffin.
And well, if he was pony napped, it would be part of my regulator position to make sure justice was served.
Well, then it's settled. What was his name? Do you have a picture, or can you describe how he looked? Anything about him that's unique besides his cutie mark?
Alguazil chimed in to interrupt me.
What was he looking for in the West?
Sparrow held up a hoof.
Hot Cross Buns was a plain brown stallion, like a piece of baked dough, and his mane was salt and pepper.
She took a breath before continuing.
He kept it cut short, like it was buzzed by one of those old speed matrix shavers.
The tent filled with the sound of Sparrow's voice breaking.
My husband had a hot cross bun, literally like a dinner roll, with white cream on top of his cutie mark. It was branded over his right flank with a blank lightning cloud with rainbow marks around the cloud. He also had a heavy ring around his neck from where he wore his necklace all the time. He never left without it.
Sparrow took a moment to collect herself before continuing. I could feel the hard time she was having, like if someone mentioned the name Buddy to me.
He never left without his necklace.
The Pegasus pulled out a small ruby necklace with a rainbow sculpture inlaid.
He never went anywhere without it. That is why I know that he is likely didn't leave on his own accord. He never left without it.
Alguazil made a motions with his talon to continue with her answers. Sparrow nodded and obliged.
Every time I asked why my buns kept checking west, his response was that he got a bad feeling coming from Las Pegasus. But that is at least a day away flying, and so more by land. I couldn't believe that some pony would head to those ruins or come by all the way out here.
I nodded and looked at Alguazil to see if he had any more questions. When he remained silent, I chimed in.
I don't see why we can't help. We're going out to Las Pegasus anyway. May as well look for hot cross buns while we're out there.
I gave the best, bravest smile I could do to the mare. The kind you give to someone to tell them you have done this 100 times before.
Sunrise, just don't get any more of your friends killed.
Sparrow shook her head at both of us.
Stable dwellers. Always the hopeful ones that make even the hardest of us have a heart.
The mercenary commander pulled the tent open with a twist of her head and walked out as quickly as she had entered. Alguazil watched her leave and started to speak up, only to be silenced as I put a hoof to his beak.
Talk to me about it later, when we don't have an audience treating us like their personal entertainment.
I gave him the cute, filly smirk I knew worked so often, especially on people older than me, and trotted out into the crowd to see that Sparrow had disappeared. Alguazil's talons and palm were not subtle, as they could be heard behind me.
Alguazil, you go check the merchant's logbooks and find out anything you can.
I told them at the junction between the flophouse and the bazaar.
You will at least know what to look for, while I would have no idea how to examine a merchant's log.
I only got a grunt of acknowledgement and started towards the flophouse to gather our friends.
Sunrise, you do realize you just made a major decision about this journey without consulting your friends?
Pink casually whispered in my ear.
I can't stand the idea of leaving a pony in distress. Besides, Sparrow adopted Nugget. Even if we fail, isn't it better she has some hope to inspire that little filly? To know that life can be better? She has been a good pony. She deserves ponies to be better to her.
Pink shut up and slowly drifted out of my sight. Well, more bounced it like a squishy squeezy ball across my vision until she was beyond my sight.
You do realize you're absolutely insane seeing Pink and hearing her? Though I suppose all of us have our quirks. I wonder if Nyota and Alguacil have something like you, Pink.
By sunset, we had gathered Chifundo, Nyota, and Quickstitch at Sparrow's home. It was easy to find it, since it was the one marked Commander and Queen.
Mares, what an ego!
We shifted around nervously, looking this way and that for the large griffin, wondering what would make the relatively disciplined Regulator late as the minutes grounded on. Suddenly, a gunshot echoed from the direction of the flophouse. Everyone turned around and stared in the direction of the tavern, as had every pony else in Zero Fang's shanty for a brief moment of silence. Then the silence ended, and they went on about their businesses, as if nothing had happened. While my friends went back to their various tasks, I kept looking in the direction till I saw Alguacil flying through the air. He landed right next to us, and I gave him a hard stare, expecting an explanation. The others were talking, but I was ignoring them, glaring at him like he had glared at me.
Did you explain it to them?
The griffin wiped his talon while he spoke. I noticed the ear poking out of his duster pocket, fresh and bloody.
No, I just told them we had to meet Sparrow. I thought I'd let you explain to them if we were taking the job or not with what you learned about the merchant.
My eyes looked away from Alguacil in disgust.
How can they kill so easily, callously, or without a second thought?
Well then, kid, fine. But this is the last time I am one to relay the decisions you make for us.
I snorted back, though the hurt in my voice was obvious to anyone with any sense.
Even if you get us protection, you still need to face the consequences of your decisions.
Way to give me the guilt trip. You and I both know we are doing this because it's the right thing to do, even if I had to kick you in the beak to make you realize it. We can still walk away, and they don't have to come with us if they don't want to.
I snorted back, though the hurt in my voice was obvious to anyone with any sense. Alguacil eyed me with his patented glare, then turned to everyone else present.
All right, where's the box pone?
He reached up to scratch the back of his head against his ear.
No idea. I haven't seen her since we worked on improving her box.
Nyota replied, chewing on a cigarette in his mouth.
Well, this is what's going on. Sparrow asked us to go find her husband, Hot Cross Buns.
I hesitated at this point, and let out a sigh as Alguacil continued on.
Since we are heading towards Las Pegasus anyway, and that is the direction she thinks he went, Sparrow isn't sure if he was taken or left. She has been kind enough to offer us dinner as we talk to her about all of it.
I looked at all of them, from friend to Quickstitch was a new-founded friend, right? Nyota shrugged and smirked.
So long as it is on the way.
Chifundo looked at Nyota, then mirrored his shrug and body language.
Going out of our way, I will not oppose. If it is for an act of kindness, I suppose.
Quickstitch shook his head.
Well, if I'm going to help the griffin, I guess I'm stuck with the rest of you.
What did you do that Alguacil has bound you to us? Do I have Alguacil or DJ Pone 3 to blame for this one?
Doesn't matter, Sunrise. You are making friends. Just keep doing what you're doing and be the better pony.
Damn it, Pink. Wait, what is your name?
Pink was already gone, out of my vision, and I couldn't find her anymore. I strove to find her in my mind, but she had hidden somewhere even I couldn't dive into. I turned and knocked on Sparrow's door with a hoof twice. Before the third hit of my hoof, Sparrow opened it with a jerk, and I had to avoid clopping a hoof onto her chest.
Sorry!
I yelped out as the Pegasus looked at me with a gotcha grin.
Oh, it's not like I wasn't listening from the other side of the door and waiting on you for nearly half an hour with dinner already made and nucka munching down on veggie stew.
The sarcasm in the air made every one of us roll their eyes.
When Alguacil and Iota roll their eyes, do they move their eyebrow that lacks an eye? Sunrise, focus on the task.
Well, don't you all just stand there? Come inside and let's have a conversation about my hot cross buns.
The way the mayor said it, it sounded like we were talking about something grown-up, and not her husband. It got a blush from me, a questioning look from Nyota and Chifundo, and another eye roll from Alguacil.
His other eyebrow does move!
We all shuffled into the shanty house, which, as it turns out, was built on an actual house, or what used to be one from before the megaspells fell. We could see the remains of the foundation as well as the steel beams reinforcing its structure. Inside were several pieces of improvised shanty furnitures mixed with pre-war pieces. The chair was a repaired lazy pony, patched with enough duct tape to nearly cover it completely, while the coffee table looked like a box that had most of its sides cut off, so you could stick your hoofs under it. Meanwhile, there were a couple of nightstands that were made from ammunition crates with the words Canterlot Armament faded on the sides. The room was lit by an electrical light being run by a spell matrix generator in the corner. At least she had electricity. The kitchen was now also attached to the living area, with an old pre-war stove that somehow still worked. Nuka Nugget was by the counter with her dull golden mane that really came close to matching her new Pegasus mother's.
No, wait, she is brighter. Nugget looks almost exactly like Sparrow now that she had a bath? How dirty is the wasteland? How bad do I look without having bathed in the last couple of days? Makes me appreciate showers or long baths now. Add them to the list of other things I miss now.
As Nugget got out balls made from various pieces of metal, I took a smell.
Carrots and potatoes! They still exist!
I dug into the soup with gusto, and I savored every spoonful. Somehow, Sparrow have gotten rosemary and pepper, as well as a decent amount of salt. Either way, the combination of tomato base with potatoes and carrots was delightful. While I ate rather noisily, might I add, everyone else took their time picking at it while asking questions for Sparrow.
Did he have any features besides the necklace impression on his neck?
Nyota prodded as he took a bite of potato. Sparrow shook her head.
Not that I can think of, and I know every inch of my buns.
Chifundo got up from his seat and started to walk towards the exit to the common room. A hallway made of scrap metal.
May I check upon where you last saw your buns, so that we may have a better chance of returning him to his hands?
Sparrow blinked a few times at the pink-striped zebra, then looked up at me. As I had my mouth full of soup, I just shrugged and chewed. The mare turned her head to Alguacil, who nodded to her.
He has some sort of ability to talk to spirits. He hasn't been wrong yet about them.
I commune with lost spirits. Wisdom imparted by their visits.
The curious way of Chifundo replying and always so fast. It was like he had 2 million rhymes ready to be issued out of his mouth at a moment's notice. I sipped on the soup, mulling this over when Nugget walked up to me and poked my side. Without hesitation, I did what I always wanted to do to a little sister. I tackled the golden filly into a heap and started using my hooves to tickle away at her flanks. The outburst surprised everyone in the room and relieved some of the tension for the rest of us. My friends all reached for weapons, and I heard the cocking of pistols before the stream of forced laughter came from Nugget. They saw our smiles, which were faded under the gaze of pistol barrels on us. I used my other hoof to motion for them to put those away, and then returned to tickle the little filly under me. Nugget cried, and I stopped tickling her and gave her a gentle hug.
It is nice to have a filly close to my age who isn't obsessed with boxes.
I helped the filly up and grinned at her before ruffling her mane with a hoof.
Yep, wish I had a sister now.
Sparrow pointed a hoof to Chifondo.
Go ahead and do your thing, Chifondo. If it helps you discover where my buns is, then I see no harm in it.
Chifondo started to speak to the air.
Hello, this good day spirit. I hope my task is worth merit. But can you remember back to where one called Buns was forced from his lair?
There was a shuffle from Chifondo's hooves as we all watched and waited.
Some of my energy. I believe I can spare it, like a friend with a berry.
We could all see the heat in the air, around Chifondo, rolling off him. Unchanneled raw magical energy cascaded around us, making our fur and mane stand up on end. All of it felt so very alien and dangerous, yet my curiosity said to inquire further and discover what exactly this creature was and could do. I felt every danger alarm in my head go off as I took one step forward. The step was too much. Suddenly, I felt dizzy, worse than the raider smashing me in the head with that hoof. My vision became blurry and Chifondo's words became distant. I barely heard the words.
Back when I remember.
And I realized they did not belong to Chifondo, but some other creature, all right before the world went black. I was inside a host body, but it felt strange, like I didn't have a physical form, just one that existed. When my host looked down for a moment to investigate a rat, I saw why.
I'm in a spirit? I have no body? How do I exist? What is this? Chifondo! You have some explaining to do! Is this what it's like to be dead? You don't feel your body so much as your mind just free floats? This is way too strange. And note to self, if I ever feel this panic or find my body and hope I can be brought back.
The host looked up to see Sparrow with a wing wrapped around a stallion that was slightly smaller than her. He was certainly a plain brown, like a cookie or wet sand.
It must be nice to have wings. You can do things like cuddle without using a hoof. Seriously, Sunrise, this is a pony napping investigation and this is what you focus on?
Suddenly, my host turned to see the window opening up, and a device twirled inside. It bounced it twice, and on the second bounce, there was no sound. My host staggered, and I felt like I had the wind bucked out of me. Two creatures in sleek, all-black armor. It faded in and out of sight, like it had some sort of camouflage that made it almost invisible. I couldn't get a feel for the size of the two creatures. Their constantly shifting fields made it impossible to tell if they were even ponies or something else. A weapon came out from under the cloak shield at the head level of the two sleeping Pegasi. I saw Hoof emerge and push the lips of Hot Crust Bun closed in his sleep. His eyes popped open as another Hoof came out and held the gun.
The needler gun! That looks like the exact same one Corners found.
A dart hit him in the side of the neck, followed by another that hit Sparrow. The two figures grabbed onto Sparrow's wing and lifted it out of the way. The first figure took Buns by the shoulders and dragged him out of the window, without taking flight or making a sound, just walking out, climbing up the wall. The second creature followed, after removing the darts. They stopped and took a knife out of a dresser, turning the blade around in pale moonlight before taking the blade into the armored cloak, which shimmered to adjust. I could see the hoof now, and knew it was a pony. They took the device off the ground. It looked like a large apple with a pair of speakers on it. As they left the room, sound returned, and my host felt the distress of having just watched the pony napping. I slammed forward, and my body felt like it had been injected with a dose of pure nausea. I couldn't take it and vomited into the bowl of soup I just had.
Soup never tastes as good on the way back up. Why could I not simply have a meal without something happening? Oh.
I didn't lose everything, but the foul taste in my mouth meant I wasn't hungry anymore. As I looked up, every eye was shifting between myself and Chifundo.
Chifundo, could you give me some warning next time you're gonna use some zebra magic and pull us all in with you?
What does the little pony mean, pull you all in? I was the only one who was meant to see where to begin.
The pink-striped stallion gave me a questioning look, as did every pony else in the room when I spoke.
So, did everyone see what happened?
I asked aloud, before seeing a mass shaking of heads.
We thank you kindly, Spirit. You have proven the merit.
Chifundo spoke to the air and then waved it away. I thought I saw a wisp of smoke, then nothing.
Sunrise, I know not how you came to enter the vision. You were never invited beyond the Great Division.
I blinked away the sickness, as I felt two hooves touching me. One belonged to Quickstitch, the other Nyota. I looked from olive green stallion to the black striped stallion, then back.
Great. Both the medical ponies are now concerned. Quick, divert attention elsewhere.
Why don't you tell them about the vision and whatever that spirit was it?
I took a moment to get approval from Chifundo before continuing. He motioned a hoof and nodded in approval.
Yeah, the spirit. It showed us.
Chifundo took his time relaying to the rest of us, in complete rhythm. It was pure torture on me, to the point I think I might prefer a broken knee.
No, I refuse to think in the way Chifundo talks.
When he finished, he seemed most disturbed, as he put a hoof up against his chin.
I think the device was something used by my kin of stripes. Thus, the spirit heeded to call of its pipes. The device's purpose to make quiet. The crimes of the pony nappers sought to hide it.
Chifundo finished speaking, and we remained quiet for a time.
Well, that settles the matter. We have pony nappers to catch, for justice.
Alguacil stated quite coldly, and I swore I heard the spinning of a snake rattle somewhere. It was like this griffin was a walking, talking embodiment of a wild Appaloosan western.
I talked to the merchant bookkeeper, quarterkeeper.
He took a long draw of air.
His books had been fixed by someone who was a former raider and sold out hot cross buns, then fixed the books. All for just 300 caps.
His stern look went from pony to pony as he waited to continue. His eye focused on Nugget for a bit, and then I realized what he was about to say. I jumped up and covered Nugget's ears with two hooves as the voice like gravel grated on steel spoke again.
Quarterkeeper did what I should have done in the first place. He took a baseball bat to that darn piece of lying liar till all his legs were broken.
Alguacil took a glass and sucked down the water.
And that stupid piece of horse patootie mentioned he should have done it for 700 caps. So, I shot him. Blew his brains all over the flophouse table and scalped his ear.
Language, Mr. Featherbooty!
There are folds in here.
Nyota and Quickstitch shouted in unison as they looked at Nugget and me. I was listening and glaring at Alguacil while Nugget was toying with her piece of potato in the soup. She was completely unaware of anything going on while I kept my hooves firmly placed against her ears.
I ain't gonna spare any details on their account. They need to know the truth. The cold, hard truth.
The griffin replied and stared at all of us to dare to challenge him on it.
Let's get going. We've bugged Sparrow enough, I think, and made her night quite eventful. We can speak with you tomorrow if we need something before we go, right, Sparrow?
I turned my head at the sound of a bottle uncorking, and Sparrow was turning up what looked like a dark red wine to her lips.
Sparrow? Oh no, you don't! You don't get to hide in that right now!
I huffed, stumped over, and grabbed the bottom of the bottle, trying to tug it away. Sparrow pulled it down with a heavy gulp.
Oh, you want some?
I could feel the eyes in the room staring at me. I felt the expectation was that I was going to say yes.
No, but you don't get to do that anymore.
Not in front of a filly, at least.
I declared, and nodded my head towards Nugget. The poor foal had a face of shock that another filly was standing up to a full-grown mare with that much defiance.
Sunrise has a point. You have a foal in the room, and we aren't going to let Alguacil off the hook any more than you.
Neora was judgmental enough that you could feel the guilt trip attempt tugging on your throat.
Holy cow! There is a lot more to that quiet zebra than any of us ever give him credit for.
Sparrow stared at me hard, then looked at the foal, and her eyes softened. She put the cork back into the bottle of wine while staring at me with a glare the entire time. She deposited the bottle into the coffee table next to her couch, the sound of metal on glass rolling until there was a tink as it came to a stop. The mare then looked over at her foal.
Nugget, dear, go to your room. It is late, and you need to get ready for bed.
Her tone was a motherly, defy me at your own risk declaration. Nugget let out a discouraged "Aww," then looked up and nodded.
Okay, Mom. Sorry, Sunrise, but I have to do...
It's okay, Nugget. I'll see you when I get back.
I paused for a moment.
With your new dad. Hot cross buns in tow.
You don't even know if he's alive! You saw the Wasteland take Buddy, and you only knew him for 2 days! You can't possibly be...
Shut up, Pink. We saw him leave here alive still. I'm bringing him back. I have to do better than...
Have us friends that you bury?
Yes. And I need to make sure that little filly gets the hope I've restored to her. I don't care how, but I would rather her be hopeful than think none of us are coming back or that her mom won't see her buns again. I had a mom and dad. She needs one too.
As soon as we heard Nugget's door close, Sparrow took her ring into the table and the wine bottle came back out. She resumed glaring at me, daring me to say something as the cork came undone, spitting it across the room. Then took a long swig. Never once did that piercing death stare leave me. Once she finished the bottle, she set it back down.
You lot should see yourselves out. I need to go tuck in Nugget and be alone for a bit.
The Pegasus walked past us, and there was a silence in the room. I noticed Quickstitch horn glowing and saw the dishes wash themselves clean, as well as stack themselves up perfectly into the drying rack.
Well, he can't be a bad stallion. He did just clean her house for her.
As I finished my thoughts, the pickled olive stallion's cleaning spell finished up. It wasn't exactly what Mom would have considered acceptable, but it was definitely far better than anything that I had seen since I woke up in that miserable pit. At the very minimum, the dishes were done and I could see the floor. We had a plan now, and at first light, I would begin to execute my 6th day in the wasteland, to head to Las Pegasus and find Sparrow's buns, all while we figure out what those strange coordinates were and where my parents were.
Level progress. 22% of the way to level 5. What? I don't always have super important updates to give. Sometimes it's just a bit of XP. That's it. What do you want, a cookie?
But not from how far. Our journey so ruthless, I still bear the scars. And what matters ain't that the world saw its end, but what kind of life we will spend.
I'm trying to be better, but still miss the mark. And each time I save you, I'm left in the dark. No,
when you're in trouble, I'll be by your side. My love for you ain't gonna hide. But inside the fire keeps burning.
Still death is darkened out sky, and all the dead trees are falling. Creatures we face will see equal judgment or mercy or grace. Decision is needed for those who survive of whether you'll be left alive.
And all bloody work for a hope that we hold of past golden age and its story still told. And what sacred virtues we're able to heed to bring back to those who are in need.